When you think about the Philippines, you're probably picturing white sand beaches, turquoise water, and infinity pools. That exists. But underneath that postcard version is something entirely different. Volcanic peaks still deciding whether to erupt, rice terraces carved 2,000 years ago by people who understood patience we've forgotten, islands that feel like they exist in another dimension. This is the Philippines I'm obsessed with. If you understand that real travel is about moments that recalibrate how you see the world, not checking boxes, you're in the right place. Like and subscribe to Passport Unfolded because we dig into the world's most overlooked corners. The Philippines isn't a single destination. It's over 7,000 islands, which means infinite moods. Every island has a different personality. The infrastructure is chaotic in a way that forces you to let go of control. The people move through life with social ease that makes you realize how much tension lives in your home country. What makes the Philippines interesting isn't just the beaches. It's how beauty coexists with complexity, where poverty and abundance are neighbors, where tradition and modernity constantly collide. If you can embrace that without needing everything Instagram perfect, the Philippines will absolutely transform how you travel. Let's start with El Nido and Coron in Palawan. These places are the closest thing to paradise. El Nido has limestone cliffs rising directly from water, beaches so white they're almost aggressive, and clarity so pure you see fish 30 feet below. But skip the crowded tour boats. Rent a kayak early morning before crowds arrive. I paddled Bacuit Lagoon at dawn with maybe 3 other people in an area packed with hundreds by midday. The light hit differently. The water was flat. You could hear yourself think. That's El Nido when you move against the current. Coron, 30 kilometers north, has a rawer vibe. It's famous for World War II wreck diving, some of the world's best, but even non-divers find something here. Camiguin Lake sits surrounded by limestone cliffs, and reaching it pulls you away from tourist infrastructure into actual villages where real life happens. Eat at restaurants without English menus. Talk to fishermen. Watch how places operate when they're not performing for tourists. BORACAY is probably the most famous beach in the Philippines. And yes, it's been developed extensively, and yes, the White Beach area gets crowded. But here's what I discovered. Most people hit BORACAY and never leave the beach. They stay in the resorts. They eat at the restaurants with English menus. They basically recreate their home country experience on a beach. Instead, head to the quieter northern end of the island. Or, better yet, take a tricycle to the eastern side where Bulabog Beach has a completely different energy. Bulabog is where the kite surfing happens, and it's got this raw, sporty vibe that makes BORACAY feel like something other than a luxury resort destination. Stay in one of the cheaper guest houses, eat where locals eat, and use BORACAY as a launching point for other islands, rather than a destination itself. The island is small enough that you can explore it entirely, and what you'll find is a place that's much more complicated and interesting than the marketing suggests. Cebu is one of the most developed islands in the Philippines, and the city of Cebu is basically a metro area where you probably shouldn't spend much time unless you're really interested in urban Philippines. But skip the city and head to KAWASAN Falls, which is a waterfall system about 90 minutes south of the city that exists in its own universe. KAWASAN Falls is what happens when you combine limestone cliffs, freshwater waterfalls, and canyoneering adventures. You can hike through the canyon with guides who know exactly how to navigate the rocks and the water, and you're basically scrambling through this geological narrative where the water has carved pathways over millennia. There are 3 main falls, and the hike takes you through all of them. The water is cold enough to be shocking, and there's a moment where you're standing in a canyon with water cascading around you where you understand why people travel to places like this. Book a local guide, not a tour company, but someone from the village who actually knows the landscape. Eat at small warongs afterward. Sit with people. This is authentic Philippines. BOHOL is famous for the Chocolate Hills, which are these dome-shaped limestone formations that cover a massive area of the island. In the dry season, they turn brown, hence the name. They're genuinely stunning to see. You can hike to the top of one and look out across hundreds of other hills stretching to the horizon. But the real move in BOHOL is to skip the main viewpoint where it's crowded, and instead hire a guide to hike to a smaller hill where you're basically alone. I did this and ended up sitting on top of a limestone dome watching the landscape, while a guide from a nearby village explained the geology and the local history. The hills aren't just scenic, they're a geological event, and understanding that changes how you experience them. From BOHOL, also visit Oslab to see whale sharks swimming in shallow water. Yes, there are ethical debates about this, but the experience of being in the water with an animal that massive is genuinely awe-inducing. Do it responsibly with guides who care about the animal's well-being. Siargao is a small island north of Mindanao that has become famous for surfing, specifically a break called Cloud 9 that has hosting international competitions since the 1980s. If you surf, this is worth the pilgrimage. If you don't surf, it's still worth visiting because Siargao has this laid-back bohemian vibe that makes it feel like a different country from the rest of the Philippines. The island is small enough that you can navigate it entirely, and there are beaches, lagoons, and rock formations that make it feel like a place where the Philippines' natural beauty gets concentrated. Stay in one of the beach hostels or guest houses, eat fresh fish that was caught the morning you eat it, and spend time in the water. Cloud 9 itself is a beach break that produces consistent waves. And even if you're not a surfer, watching people navigate those waves is hypnotic. The town around the break is this collection of beach bars and restaurants where people from all over the world have essentially parked themselves permanently. It's touristy, but in a way that feels organic rather than manufactured. The Banaue rice terraces in northern Luzon are 2,000 years old, carved into mountains by the Ifugao people using techniques that predate written language. They're one of the most stunning human-made landscapes in the world, and standing in front of them forces you to recalibrate what humans are capable of. The terraces look like topographic lines that somehow became agricultural. Each level is precisely engineered to catch and distribute water, and the whole system exists without modern machinery or technology. I hiked through the terraces early in the morning when the light was soft, and the mist was still settling in the valleys. I stayed in a guest house in the village of Banaue, ate with local families, and spent a full day just walking through the terraces without going anywhere specific. What I realized is that the terraces aren't just beautiful, they're a philosophical statement about how humans should live in relationship with landscape. They're an argument against dominance and for cooperation. Stay long enough to understand the villages, not just to photograph the views. Eat at family-run restaurants. Talk to farmers. The terraces are stunning, but the culture around them is what makes them actually matter. VIGAN is a colonial city in northern Luzon that feels like you've stepped into a different era. It was established in the 1500s by Spanish colonizers, and it's maintained its colonial architecture in a way that's almost unreal. The main street, Calle Crisologo, is lined with Spanish colonial buildings that have been converted into restaurants and shops. But what makes VIGAN interesting is that it's not a theme park real people live here. Real businesses operate. It's not performed for tourists. It's just how the city actually functions. I spent an afternoon walking through VIGAN without a specific destination, just letting the narrow streets dictate my movement. I ended up at small cafes and churches, in museums that explained the city's history. I ate at restaurants that had been operating for decades, serving food that was genuinely local rather than designed for tourists. VIGAN is the kind of place that rewards slowness. Don't try to see everything in a day. Spend time. Let the city reveal itself. MAYON volcano in Bicol is possibly the most perfectly symmetrical volcano in the world. It's an almost perfect cone, and looking at it makes you understand why people used to think volcanoes were spiritual places. The volcano is still active. It erupted as recently as 2018, which means you're looking at a mountain that could fundamentally change itself at any moment. I visited from Legazpi, the city closest to the volcano, and took a trek to a viewpoint called Cogsawa Ruins, where you can see the volcano rising behind the remains of an 18th century church that was destroyed by a volcanic eruption. There's something about standing at the ruins of something destroyed by the mountain and then looking up at that same mountain that puts human ambition into perspective. Hire a local guide. The volcano is dangerous and guides know the safest routes. Climb early in the morning when the weather is clear. Bring proper gear. When you reach the summit and you're standing inside the crater, watching steam rise from the ground beneath your feet, you understand why people write poetry about mountains. Manila is chaotic in a way that makes most travelers uncomfortable, but Intramuros, the walled old city, is where Manila's actual history lives. It was built by Spanish colonizers in the 1500s and contains churches, colonial buildings, and streets that give you a sense of what the city was before it became a sprawling metropolis. Walk through Fort Santiago, which was the center of Spanish colonial rule, and understand the complicated history of colonial power and local resistance. The walls of Intramuros are still standing in sections, and walking along them gives you perspective on how cities were organized and defended centuries ago. Eat at restaurants that serve traditional Filipino food rather than tourist-oriented fusion. Visit the San Agustin Church, which is one of the oldest stone churches in the Philippines. Spend an afternoon here understanding history rather than trying to optimize your time. Manila gets a bad reputation, but Intramuros shows you why it was important and why people were willing to fight for it. Tagaytay is a ridge community about an hour south of Manila that sits at about 600 meters elevation, which means it's noticeably cooler than the lowlands. From Tagaytay, you can see TAAL volcano, which is technically the most dangerous volcano in the world because there are over 1 million people living in the danger zone around it. TAAL volcano is small. The volcano itself is only about 300 meters tall, but it's situated in the middle of TAAL Lake, which is situated inside an even larger caldera, which means the geography is essentially nested disasters waiting to happen. I spent an afternoon in Tagaytay just looking at the volcano across the lake, drinking coffee at small cafes that overlook the view. I also took a boat trip across TAAL Lake and hiked up the volcano itself, which takes maybe 30 minutes and gives you views of the crater and the lake. The volcano is still active. You can smell sulfur, you can feel the heat coming from the ground, which makes the climb feel genuinely slightly dangerous in a way that makes you feel alive. Don't just look at TAAL from Tagaytay, actually go out to it. Apo Reef is one of the largest coral reef systems in the world, located off the coast of Mindoro, and if you dive, this place is genuinely life-changing. The reef is mostly pristine because it's a marine sanctuary, which means it's protected, and the wildlife is still intact. I went with a diving operator based in Puerto Galera and spent a day diving multiple sites on the reef. The coral formations are massive and colorful, the fish populations are healthy, and there's a sense that you're seeing what reefs looked like before we started destroying them. Even if you're not a diver, you can snorkel here, and the snorkeling alone is worth the trip. The experience of being in the water surrounded by life, coral, fish, sharks, rays, in an environment that feels healthy and intact is increasingly rare. Support the marine sanctuary by diving responsibly and choosing operators who prioritize conservation. Batanes is an island province in the far north of the Philippines, and it's geographically and culturally distinct from the rest of the country. it's windswept, it's cool. It's got this rugged, raw quality that makes it feel almost Hawaiian. The people have distinct customs, the food is different, the landscape is different. I took a flight from Manila to Batanes Island, and the moment I arrived, I understood I was somewhere completely separate. The cliffs are dramatic, the wind is constant. The people have a different energy. I spent time hiking, visiting local villages, eating fresh seafood at family-run restaurants. There's a lighthouse called Basco Lighthouse that you can hike to, and from the top you can see the entire island and the ocean stretching in every direction. Batanes is remote enough that it discourages casual tourism, which means the people who do visit tend to actually engage with the place rather than just pass through. This is Philippines that exists outside the tourism infrastructure. Camiguin is a small island off the coast of Mindanao that has multiple volcanoes, hot springs, and a kind of raw, authentic Philippines. Feeling that makes it feel different from other tourist destinations. There's a volcano called Mount Hibok that you can hike in a few hours, and the trail takes you through jungle and then opens up to views across the whole island. There's also a sunken cemetery that you can dive or snorkel to. It's basically a graveyard that sank into the ocean during a volcanic eruption, and seeing the crosses underwater is genuinely eerie and moving. There are hot springs called ardent hot springs, where you can bathe in naturally heated water. Camiguin is small enough that you can navigate it entirely, and the tourism infrastructure is minimal, which means you're engaging with an actual place rather than a destination designed for tourists. Hundred Islands National Park is located in Pangasinan, on the western coast of Luzon, and it's a collection of limestone islands that rise dramatically from the ocean. The main beach area gets crowded, but if you hire a private boat, which is actually quite cheap if you negotiate, you can island hop to the quieter islands and have them basically to yourself. I spent a day moving between islands, swimming in different bays, exploring caves, watching how the light changed as the sun moved across the sky. Some islands have trails, some have caves, some are just beautiful rocks rising from clear water. The whole experience is about movement and discovery rather than arriving at a destination. Bring snorkeling gear and explore the underwater terrain. Bring enough water and food to be self-sufficient. Use the 100 Islands as an opportunity to move at your own pace rather than following a tour group schedule. Davao is the biggest city in Mindanao and is often overlooked because it's not on the typical tourist trail. But Davao is interesting because it gives you a sense of what Philippines' economic development actually looks like outside of Manila. And the typical tourist areas, the city is relatively prosperous, relatively organized, and has a completely different vibe from other parts of the country. There's a mountain called Mount Apo nearby that's the highest peak in the Philippines. And if you're serious about hiking, climbing Apo is a genuine undertaking. The climb takes 2 to 3 days, and you're hiking through jungle and then above the tree line through volcanic landscape. There's a moment near the summit where you're literally walking through clouds, and when you reach the top and the clouds clear, you can see the entire landscape spreading beneath you. Davao is also known for durian fruit, which is absolutely worth trying, even though it's famously pungent. Eat at local markets, not tourist restaurants. Sagada is a small mountain town in northern Luzon that has become something of a backpacker destination, but it maintains an authentic quality that makes it worth visiting. The town is surrounded by limestone cliffs, waterfalls, and caves, and there's a culture of caving here that makes Sagada unique. You can do spelunking tours through massive cave systems, exploring underground rivers and cathedral-sized caverns. But the real Sagada experience involves spending time in the town itself, eating at small restaurants, sitting in cafes, understanding how a small Philippine mountain community actually operates. There's also a cemetery with hanging coffins, an indigenous practice that's been maintained for centuries and is genuinely moving when you understand the cultural significance Sagada rewards slowness. Don't rush through. Spend at least a few days understanding how the place actually functions. SIQUIJOR is a small island with a reputation for mysticism and magic because it's historically been associated with folk practitioners and traditional healers. Whether you believe in the mystical aspects or not, the island has a genuinely different energy than other Philippine islands. It's small, it's quiet, it's got this laid-back, slightly mysterious vibe. There are waterfalls, beaches, and old churches. There's a sacred mountain where people gather during certain times of year. There are local shamans and healers if you're interested in that kind of thing. The main town, Lazi, is small enough that you can walk through it in an afternoon. The whole island is accessible, and because it's less developed than some other islands, it feels like Philippines that exists outside the mainstream tourism infrastructure. Stay longer than you think you need to. Let the island's energy settle into you. Lake Cebu in South Cotabato is a freshwater lake in the mountains of Mindanao, and it's significant because it's home to one of the last indigenous peoples of the Philippines, the Taboli people. The lake itself is beautiful, surrounded by mountains and forests, but what makes it important is the culture around it. You can visit Taboli villages and learn about their weaving traditions, their history, their relationship with the land. You can take boat rides across the lake, swim in the water, hike in the surrounding forest. What I found meaningful about Lake Cebu is that it's not performed as a destination. It's a place where indigenous culture actually continues to exist. When you visit, your presence affects that balance, which is why it's important to engage respectfully. Hire local guides, eat at local restaurants, buy directly from artisans rather than through tourist intermediaries. Understand that you're a visitor in someone else's home, not a consumer of a destination. Every place I've mentioned, El Nido, Coron, BORACAY, Cebu, BOHOL, Siargao, Banaue, VIGAN, MAYON, INTRAMUROS, TAGAYTAY, REEF, BATANES, Camiguin, 100 Islands, DAVAO, SAGADA, SIQUIJOR, Zambales, Lake Cebu, reveals the actual Philippines. They require effort and patience, not Instagram optimization. All specifics are in the description, so you build your own itinerary. If this made you want to book the Philippines immediately, hit like and subscribe to Passport Unfolded. We focus on places that reward curiosity over comfort. Real travel is about understanding people and places, not collecting experiences. Thanks for watching.